Hello, and welcome to another installment of the Strategy Network Showcase. This month's guest speaker is Joe Krutzinger. He has been developing fully automated trading systems for over 38 years and was one of TradeStation's first customers. Today, he will discuss his favorite strategy, Joe Krutz Razor. I want to share some important information to consider during this showcase. This presentation is for education purposes only. Active trading, regardless of asset class, can be very risky, and it is not suitable for everyone. If you would like to read the full disclosure, you can find it in the Documents section at the bottom right-hand corner of this page. Joe is independent of TradeStation, and his approach to the market and style of trading is his own. I hope you all enjoy today's presentation.
Okay, I guess I'll take over. Let's hit the slideshow. Okay, good afternoon. I've been getting over that flu that everybody's had in 47 states, so my voice is kind of cracky, so I apologize in advance for that. But I hope you'll enjoy today's presentation as much as I enjoy giving it. Joe Krutz Razor is one of my favorite systems. Can you all hear me? It says here John can hear me, John B can hear me, and John K cannot. Would everybody just type yes or no or Ludo or Popeye? Okay, super deal. I guess we're okay then. We'll carry on. Obviously, this is a disclaimer that we're talking about earlier today, and you can read this at your leisure. Also, don't worry about taking notes. If you want to contact me by email, I'll be glad to send you a PDF of this if you don't have one for some reason. But it'll be interesting to see how to use Joe Krutz Razor. And we aren't selling anything today. I would like you to go to the Strategy Network and download a free 10-day trial of it and play with it and give me your feedback on it, and obviously write any kind of evaluation of it that you like. I appreciate it. Today's subject is automated index trading using Joe Krutz Razor from Strategy Network. This is the disclaimer we talked about before, and these are hypothetical performance reports. They are not been done in an account. Obviously, this is a simulated presentation as far as we're doing it. My background, I've been continuously registered with the CFTC since 1976. I have block number 1 of TradeStation. I also had the very first system writer back in 86, 87. So I've been around the horn a little bit. I've written 4 books on system trading and been involved in most areas of the futures market since 1976. First of all, before we get into my particular system, I just want to talk about expectations and what you should be looking for when you're evaluating any system, whether it's mine, yours, or ours. First of all, if you take a look at the last 80 years of the Dow and you look at dividends and growth, you'll see that on average over an 80-year period, it's about an 8.8% return. You had big years up, big years down. Last 10 years hasn't been anything to speak of, but on average in 80 years, your expectation of event has been 8.8%. Now this is a little table that I got from Bell State Bank and Trust that showed a bunch of unmanaged indexes that people use for IRA investments. And basically it's like putting the money in the S&P 500 index or the value line or the NASDAQ 100. Now if you look at this table with hindsight, you'd see that the NASDAQ 100 is the biggest number on the table. It's up 12.94% annualized, and that's for 2012. So just to put it in perspective, the Dow Jones over 80 years, your expectation of event is about 8.8%. And last year, with hindsight, looking back at all the unmanaged indexes, the NASDAQ 100 would have been your best bet at a little less than 13%. So keep those numbers in your mind, if you would, through the presentation. When you go to TradeStation Strategy Network, I'll show you in a minute how to get to my stuff, but just type in Joe or Joe Krutz up in the search engine, and it'll pop up the windows that'll give you an idea. And again, I haven't had a lot of people on here yet, so if you would write an evaluation of it, I'd appreciate it. And if you, you know, like they say, if you have good things to say about it, put it there. If you've got bad things, tell me, and I'll fix it. But seriously. Either way, I want to get your evaluations and get your feeling, because I've been doing this a long time, and this is I think, pardon the pun, it's one of my sharpest products, Joe Crutz Razor, because it can basically find the time window when the market is quietest and where the big guys aren't trading yet. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but I think that's an important attribute. Now, when you go to the TradeStation.com and you can see the Strategy Network tab, you just touch that. I'll just go through the mechanics of it. And then when you go, when it comes to the Strategy Network, just type in either Joe or Joe Crut and then hit search. And then you'll see my 5 products. And basically, the Joe Crut Switcher is free, which I think is kind of cool. You can add it to any system, and it'll basically give you a moving average of your equity curve. And when your equity is above its moving average, the bars below it are green, and when it's below it, it's red. I usually use the input number 30 for days, and for hours I would use 240, and for 5-minute bars 2880. And there's a little PDF there that explain a little bit about it. But I think it's pretty cool to evaluate a system based on its own equity curve of the last 30 days, because it will give you an idea of what's making money right now. If you look at most systems, if you say, okay, let's look at a year's track record of a system or a simulation, and one makes 20 grand and one makes 18 grand, most people would naturally say, well, I want to trade the one that makes 20 grand. But if you look at the equity curve and you see that the one that made 20 grand made all its money the first 2 months of the period, and the rest of the time has been in drawdown, you might be more tendency to be in one that is above its equity curve right now when you're getting into it and is getting stronger. And that's the purpose of Joe Crut Switcher and Diff. So I hope that you take those, and those are free for yours forever. Then I also hope that you pick Joe Crut Razor and take a free trial on it so you can use some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today. Now, as we go through, if you have some questions, I'm going to take them at the end because this is archived. But if you go ahead and write them down so that you remember them, and we'll get to them at the end. This will take about 40 minutes, and then we'll review the questions at that time. Now, when you start a free trial, basically, since I've already participated in the trial, it says, oh boy, you can't do it, but all of you will be able to do it. And I think it's, again, it'll come up with just the chart of the E-mini S&P in the March if you use version 12, and it'll show the buys and sells. And you can automate it or put it on the simulator, but it's, I also will give you a table that will show you the inputs for 16 different markets. So you don't just have to do the E-mini S&P, you can try many different things. Okay. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with Strategy Network, but it's just getting better all the time, and it's quite a thing. If you're a developer or you're thinking about becoming a developer, well, I suggest you put a system up there and learn how to use it, because TradeStation's given us quite a tool here to let you get a trial on something without putting up any money and playing with it and seeing how it fits your personality. And there's lots of different developers now. I was the first developer because just by the nature of the game, but there's a lot of really good guys out there, and they've got some fine work. So be sure to take advantage of Strategy Network. It's just a fine product. When you get a trial on a Strategy Network, a window will come up there and you'll hit launch, and this will happen if you have several TradeStations. Every time you load a new TradeStation, if you're subscribed with that password, it will pop up there for you to use. Now, if you want to change the item, in other words, when you pop it up from Strategy Network, it'll be the E-mini S&P, and it'll be on a 1-minute bar, and it'll be back for like 4 or 5 months maybe. But if you want to try it on a 5-minute basis, or if you want to try it on a 60-minute basis, I'll be showing a table here later with like 16 different items. You just go into the format symbol and change the symbol like you would any other chart. A trick to get a lot of data from TradeStation, I don't know if you guys all know this, but it's kind of fun. If you put down that you want the last 6 months of data while the market's open. Sometimes it'll say you're getting 6 months of data, but you only get like 3 weeks of data. A little trick to do that, to get around that, is for the last date, do not use today's date. Go back a couple weeks, and that way you'll be pulling the data not from the active data file of TradeStation, but you'll be pulling it from the archive database. And that'll allow you to write to the cache of your own machine all that data. And my stuff's fairly intensive, looking at 1-minute bars. So you pull back the E-mini S&P March, and you go back 6 months, but don't start today. Go back about 2 weeks ago and build that data. Then save that workspace, and once that's done, you can put today's date in. It'll fill in the correct data, and now all your data is perfect, and it goes back 6 months. It's kind of a little workaround, but it's worth knowing, because otherwise sometimes you look at a record and say, oh gee, it's supposed to be 6 months, but it's only showing me 3 months or 3 weeks, and then you have to call somebody. Now when you come up with a chart, this shows one trade. Here is a short and here is a cover. And if you use the Trade Manager and Analyzer, you'll see that, for instance, these two are automated and this one is not. When you have something automated using Trade Manager and Analyzer, you can go flat, flat, true, and you know that the hypothetical is flat, your real money's flat, and those two match, so it's true. So 2 of these are automated, and the new Joe Krutt Razor is not. But that's how it will show up. And again, this is just the subscribe page, but don't forget, when you go to the subscribe page, tick on these 2 support documents. I've given you a checklist to do every morning, and how to operate it, and then also how to optimize it, which is kind of a nice little bonus situation. There's a difference between running a trading system and writing a trading system. A lot of people don't really have the time to write a professional trading system. And with TradeStation Strategy Network, you don't have to. You can actually use other people's trading systems and see how they work for you. I think one of the advantages of a system like mine that has inputs that you can optimize and play with is it lets you see a bit of transparency that you don't see in black box systems normally. Normally, if you buy a system or if you follow a managed account or whatever happens, and you don't know why it's happening. But at least with my systems, I try to show you what each of the inputs are and how you can change those inputs and make the system truly your own. We'll do a little bit of that here in a moment. Now, if you're automating Razor and you want to turn it on and see how it works, whether in the simulator or real, basically you apply the chart and you make sure you've got your commission in and your capital, and you put down maximum number of shares or positions, which we're going to do 1 contract, and we're going to say 1 contract, both of these places here in the general tab. And once that's done, we're going to do, when we hit the automation boxes and we're going to agree, I'm going to put the maximum shares at 1 contract. Again, it's just kind of a little safety valve to make sure that you don't trade too many contracts, especially when you're first checking it out. Now, when you get to the next box, I want to bring your attention that the default from TradeStation is automatic execution using whatever your account number is with confirmation on. Well, don't use that. If you have confirmation on, what's going to happen is every time a trade happens, it will pop up at you and say, hey, do you want to do this trade? And in true automation form, you don't want to do that. You want the system to keep making the trades. And so the correct answer is you agree, but with confirmation off. All right. Now, another thing that I do, I think that's a little different than a lot of developers, I have private websites for all my clients, people who own my systems, lease my systems, or try my systems. I have a total of 18 different websites, but I load up information daily, and you can get a little link to this when you subscribe, and it's just part of the service. When I see something that needs to be optimized, or I see something that has to be done to the system, I post it on this website, and this is how I communicate with. I've got like 441 clients now all over the world, and it's a good way for me to get information to everybody. Now, when you become a client, even on a trial, you'll go to the news section of this website. And you can see this is the news that's been posted so far this year. And it gives you a new video and a PDF for Razor with the settings. And I like to make these little PDF books so that you don't have to listen to me drone on. You can just pull down the PDF and go to the meat and potatoes of the presentations. But I do this for everything I post so that you've got a written record of what my thinking is. And my inputs aren't any better than anybody else's, but they do give you a place to start. If any of you have ever written a book or an article, magazine article, you know it's a lot easier to edit someone else's work and criticize somebody else's work than it is to start with a blank piece of paper and do something. And so my feeling is I'll provide a system and I'll give you the inputs which I think work fairly well, and I'll show you how to get your own inputs. But it's better for you to try and play with the inputs, in my opinion, than it is for you to try to develop a new system, because system writing isn't that easy. You can get a system that'll work, you know, some of the time, but to get a system that's consistent, it's a fairly difficult task. And so I like the idea of operating a system, running it, changing the variables, watching the equity, as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel every time. Now I'm going to explain Joe Krutt Razor, and I think this is kind of interesting because very few developers explain gray box or black box systems. But basically, Razor is a checklist type strategy. If the minor trend is up, and I'm talking about real minor, like, you know, a number of minutes on a 1-minute chart, and we are in a time window, and I'll talk about that a little more later, and we currently have no long position, and we have not had more than one trade from the long side with this date on it. At that time, if all that stuff lines up, we'll do a buy of a channel breakout of a certain number. If the minor trend is down and we're in the time window and we have no current short position, we have no more than one trade with this date on it, we'll sell short in a channel breakout. Now the time window is this. I've been around this business since 1976. I used to watch every tick in the bonds, and if you could look and see me, you'd see a tall, heavy, bald guy with big gray circles under his eyes from watching every tick of the bonds for about 20 years. TradeStation does that for you. It'll watch and tell you when certain conditions exist, and it'll also be able to go back and test and see what happens when those certain conditions exist, what happened right after that. And one of the things I've discovered is basically when the market is quiet and then you have a breakout, the breakouts tend to be bigger. And when the market is very wild and has big ranges and the breakouts come, they're very small. Now Larry Williams taught this 25 years ago, and I went to like 40 Larry Williams seminars. I think I gave 3 of them. But the point of it is he was a master system follower and system writer. And a premise that was proven over and over and over again was when ranges are quiet, when they're narrow, and you have a breakout, the breakout tends to be bigger. Now, probably the reason for this is bigger money waits for volatility to occur. So bigger money systems, people who run, you know, big funds, they watch for when the volatility comes into the market, and then they'll follow. Now, the whole idea of a system for a smaller guy is to try to get in before that big set of money comes in from hedge funds, etc. And so the basic of Razor is this. You look for the quiet time window that historically, going back through the data, has been a quiet time. You look for also that range to be very small and then to follow the breakout with the current little trend. That's the basic of the entry. Now, once in a position, a different checklist comes into play. If you reached a certain time, I'll exit. If a certain amount of money is lost, our stop is triggered. Once a certain amount of money is achieved, a closer stop is put into place using trailing floors and trailing percents. So, not to brag, but I want to tell you, most people who write a system make it very easy for themselves to get into a trade. They'll get in for any reason. You know, they'll see somebody on television talking about something and they'll get into it. But then they make it very hard for themselves to get out. They'll stay with the position way too long. I write systems exactly the opposite. I make it very difficult with an advanced checklist to get into a trade. Once I'm in a trade, I'll get out for any little reason. A trailing stop, a time exit, a profit target, whatever. If there's a reason to be out, I want out. And my systems tend to not be in the market for a very long period of time. And that's why they have a high RENA number usually, because they have have low drawdown, a big average trade, net profit, and in the market a small amount of time. And we'll look at that as we go a little further here. But this is pretty cool. And even if you don't use my system, you might use this logic when thinking your own systems, because I've looked this over for a long, long time, and the logic holds up in just about every market I've looked at. Now, the performance of historical optimized input parameters can vary dramatically when traded on live market data. Of all the things in this presentation, this is the one piece of paper I think you should try to print. And if you have a PDF of it, I think it would be wise for you to look at it. There's a lot of work here. And basically what it is these are the inputs on the left. And then in the right, like I have two pink columns there in the top. That's the NASDAQ 1 minute and the NASDAQ 5 minute. The next two columns are the mini Dow 1 minute and the mini Dow 5 minute. The next two is the the Russell 2000 at the ICE 1 minute and the Russell 2000 5 minute at the ICE. Then there's that E-mini S&P 1 minute and the E-mini S&P 5 minute. And the last is the mid-cap S&P 400 1 minute and the mid-cap 5 minute. Now, why those five? Well, first of all, they're very liquid. They're stock indexes. Second of all, TradeStation gives you day trade margin. So if you have a system like this, you can call your broker and say, hey, I've got one of Joe Kratzinger's systems. I'm going to have less than a $300 stop on every trade. I'm going to be out by 3 o'clock Chicago time on every trade. And I'm going to run in full automation mode. I want to get day trade margins. And you can cut your margins down to a fourth of what they are for overnight margins. And that's important when you're trading smaller accounts. If you take a look at the NASDAQ, for instance, it's using a $180 stop. The mini Dow 5 minutes, $130 stop. These are very close stops on instruments that are about $60,000 worth of stock. So although we get stopped out a lot, we're right half the time, and we make $2 for every dollar we lose. That's a little concept they call winning. Anyway, I also have a custom session that I like to use. If you take a look at that bottom input, for instance, the mini NASDAQ, I have 830-259. And that's a session, and you can get that from me. I'll give it to you for free. But the market really runs from 8:30 to 3:15. But what I'm saying is, let's pretend the market closes at 3 o'clock Central, or 2:59 basically. Well, there's a big volume spike there when the New York Stock Exchange closes. And if you look at volume charts, you'll see that the volume really drops off in that last 15 minutes of trading. So this is a way around using TradeStation's built-in exit on close of entry, exit on close, set exit on close. Because if you put set exit on close in real time, then you can't really use it, because by the time you get the end day flag, the market's already closed. But by having a custom session, you can get out with 15, 16 minutes to go, and that allows you something really cool. It allows you to check your tracker and make sure that you're flat. And if you're made a mistake or whatever, I have a little afternoon checklist. At 3:01, you should be out of all these trades. If you aren't, turn off the automation, get out my manual, and find out what mistake you made. But it gives you a time period to evaluate and make sure your systems have worked correctly. And I think that's a pretty clever idea. Then the bottom section there is non-index items. There's mini gold, there's the March bonds, there's the euro currency, there's the British pound, there's the Japanese yen, and there's a couple of mini crude oils. So anyway, interesting little idea, I think, to take one system that's basically done pretty well on the E-mini S&P, and then use it on 15 other items. And there is a PDF file from me. If you email me, I'll send you the PDF. It's no problem at all. I'll be glad to do that. All right, let's go on to the next. Now, here's a little caution to you. When you're trading multiple strategies on the same futures contract, let's say you wanted to trade the 1-minute E-mini and the 5-minute E-mini. You can do it. The best way, of course, is to have separate accounts and pick a different account for each one of them in this box. You can also call your broker and get what's called sub-accounts and have your account divided into smaller money. And that's really a good way because it makes the brokerage firm do the accounting for you, and you can see how much money you make in the 1-minute work and how much money you make in the 5-minute work, or lose. Without that, you can go into where it says Strategy Properties and look under the Automation tab and check the third box. If you check the third box on both the 1-minute and the 5-minute, it will allow both of them to trade. It may mix them up, but of course at the end of the day, if you buy two and sell two, you'll make or lose the same amount of money. So it really won't make any difference. If you have any questions about this, it's a little kind of esoteric, but you can call or email me and I'll walk you through it. But it's interesting that it can be allowed. You can automate one symbol and have two systems running on it. This is only in futures. You can't really do that in stocks. All right. Now, let's say you're starting from fresh and you decided to pull up a chart, and then you can insert the strategy and start the optimization process. The first thing you want to optimize is the time window, time 1 and time 2. This is the time that tells you when is the quietest time in the market. And if you're trading on hourly bars, you would test something like 8:30 to 1400 or 1430 in increments of 100. If you're on 10-minute bars, it would be something like 8:30 to 1450 in increments of 10. Regardless, you want to do time 1 and time 2 together. Also, there's a time X. That's the exit time. That's the time where the machine will just automatically get you out of the trade at the next bar after that time. So you want to set that to the ending day time. If the market closes at 1600, then put it at 1600 when you're doing your first test. If you want to have a $300 stop on every trade, then leave it in there, and then let that first run go and see where that time window is. Now, this is a checklist on exactly how to optimize Razor using your own input values. If you don't want to use my input values, that's fine. You can kind of roll your own tobacco. You load a TradeStation, you create a 6 or 12-month, 1-minute, 5-minute, 10-minute chart of the Russell or any stock index. Use session hours. Make sure you use an exchange time and the correct session. New York markets, I use 9:30, 3:59. Chicago markets, which is most of the indexes, it's 8:30, 2:59. Leave the exit on close true for all day trades. Leave the stop at 300. Put the time exit at 1600. Leave all the other stops at 0. Turn off the 1-minute resolution because you don't need it to find the window. And you can put in my Joe Krutz switcher if you want. But go ahead and do your tests and do your time 1, time 2 together, then your length 2 to 8 in steps 0.1, and then test your time exit from 9:35 to 15:55 in steps of 5 or 10. Once that's all done, you'll have the basic system variables. That'll take about 20 minutes probably. Then you can turn on the 1-minute resolution and test for stops and test for trailing stops. Once that's done, you want to look at your strategy summary and evaluate, and look at your trade by trade and see if you can stand what happens, and then set up your automation with the correct boxes checked for your situation. Repeat for each security on a separate workspace for each. The reason I put each chart on a separate workspace is I consider TradeStation to be nothing more than a 3-ring binder. And I have a desktop is that 3-ring binder, let's say for Razor. And then I have a different tab for the E-mini 1-minute and a different tab for the E-mini 5-minute. And if I want to have one of those open and the other one closed, I can just go File, close the workspace, and only have the ones open that I'm actively trading. Makes it much simpler than looking through a workspace that has 9 charts on it and deciding which one to automate. Remember, I was a broker for 20 years, and I got to make it simple. I got to make it simple in the heat of battle so that you can actually turn this thing on at 8 o'clock in the morning, have it email your stuff to your phone and tell you what's going on, and then you look at it again at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So you don't have to just sit and watch every tick. Now, when you're optimizing, it takes time to do these things. Here are 3 different optimizations, basically, on the Joe Crut Razor. This is running on the times. The first one takes 3,569 tests, and it took 9 seconds to do 10 of them. Then we were down to, we had 320 tests already done, and that took us 5 minutes, and it would have taken us 58 minutes to do the rest of them. Then the next test, we were 26 seconds into it when we were halfway through, and so it took another minute. I obviously wasn't going to sit here and hit the optimizer and show you all that, but I wanted to show you that it does take time to do this. And part of my job is not only to write systems and support people when they call me, but my job, I think, is to keep these optimizations going for the clients. If you read John Clayburgh's book, it's got a nice little book that TradeStation printed on automation. And one of the things he says, and I definitely agree with, is don't optimize over a huge period of time. Take 3 or 4 months, optimize it, and then every 3 weeks or a month, optimize it again. Keep your optimizations tuned to the current market. There used to be a lot of talk about neural nets. Neural nets are basically optimization tables that you can't see. The best neural net in the world is the one between your ears. And TradeStation has a big advantage because when you do an optimization, you get to see transparencies, like what we want in the government. It's transparent. It lets you see what happens if you do any one of these different things. And for instance, this one outlines the best one it picked was $3,252. All right. Now, we'll go on a little bit. And after we do the times and get the next optimization going, then we optimize the length. And the length is determining the breakout length and the range length that we're using to make the determination of quietness, if there is such a word. Basically, when you want a breakout, you want it from a very slow, quiet market, a very tight range. And that's how you get away with using closed stops in a tight range breakout. The complete series of runs takes about an hour per security. And we're coming up here. This shows you your optimization table for the length. And here is your optimization, basically the last one, and I'll get to where it looks better, but I just wanted to show you some of the detailing that goes into this. And when you're checking your stops, you want to turn your resolution on. On a 1-minute chart, you don't need it, but on 5-minute and 60-minute chart, you want to have that 1-minute resolution on when you test the stop loss and the stop, floor, and trail. Now the stop, floor, and trail I think is really interesting. What it amounts to is, let's say your stop loss is $300 and your stop floor is 150 and your percent trail is 50. What it means is nothing is going to happen trailing wise until $1 worth of profit. Once that happens, it will bring your stop up to entry plus 50% of your biggest open profit. So basically it locks in 75 bucks. In that example. That's kind of a clever trailing stop, because unlike a regular trailing stop that just trails in lockstep, it's kind of like a fuzzy logic trailing stop in that as you get a bigger profit, it risks more money because it's still risking like 50% of the profit. So as you make more profit, it risks a little more. Kind of interesting idea. Tested it a lot, and that's a real nice stop. This is an optimization test. It shows that it was going to take 35 minutes just to do that. And again, I wouldn't give you a seminar and have me sitting here watching an optimization. But once you get the report, the final report, now this one shows you your stop loss floor, and your stop loss percent, and it shows you every possibility. Now, you don't have to pick the one that makes the most money. TradeStation by default sorts these results by net profit. I personally like to sort my results on return on account, because that takes into consideration net profit divided by drawdown. And so I want to make the most I can with the least drawdown. So I always look at this column too. And it's really neat if the return on account size number is also the top net profit, which it is in this particular case. So I look at the whole table every time. Everybody with me on this? I know it's boring, but this is kind of cool stuff in a way, because TradeStation is one of the few tools where you can actually see the transparency of what's going on in your system. Even if you don't look at the code, you can see how the variables interact and what you can do to make the system more representative of the way you want to trade. Now, these are conclusions of optimization as far as I'm concerned. First of all, optimization is no holy grail. There's no way that optimizing every 2 or 3 weeks is going to guarantee you're going to make money. It just doesn't work that way. Back testing can be a valuable tool for strategy development. Optimization can either significantly enhance a system or ruin it completely. Depends on how it's used. Over-optimization can lead to false expectations for a strategy and render it useless. The best and final test of a system can only occur in real time. That's really all that counts. Like Fagan said, the only thing that counts is money in the bank in big amounts. Keep your strategy in step with the current market conditions by using minimal data for re-optimization. Now, these 5 steps are not my words. These are Dr. John Clayburgh. He's a friend of mine and a very good system developer in his own right. But I tend to agree with him, so he must be smart. And I really like the idea of taking a close piece of data, the one that's closest to this last quarter, optimizing it, and running it forward for 2, 3, 4 weeks, watching the equity curve as I go, and then re-optimizing it. Basically, creating my own neural net, but giving it transparency that a neural network doesn't give you, because you can see the optimization table and see the choices that are being made. Now, there's all kinds of risks in trading stock indexes and leveraged products. You know that. But I particularly like having a system that can trade a $60,000 or $70,000 asset with $300 stop. And so if I get 3 stops in a row, I'm out 900 or whatever it is, and I'm still ready to take that next trade, as opposed to the guy who risks 1,000 or 2,000 on each trade, and after 3 or 4 trades, it's pretty hard to take that next trade. Now, watch this closely because this gets confusing. This is a 6-month test on the E-mini S&P 1 minute. And you can see it shows $5,427. This is a simulation. 59% right. The average trade size is $44.49. And it's in the market less than 8% of the time. RENA index is 501. And if you take the absolute value of the drawdown, divided in the net profit, it goes 4.8 times. Decent numbers, and this is what we came up with the 6-month test. Now, watch this. These are the actual variables. And when you get the PDF, you can duplicate this by typing them in using your Razor trial. And I think these are the variables actually that come into the Razor trial. This is what the equity curve looks like. And a perfect equity curve would be a 45-degree line that was all green. This ain't perfect. This is just commodity trading. But remember, we're looking at something. I'm going to go back 1 slide. Remember when we talked about expectation of event and we said the stock market over the last 80 years has averaged about 8.8% return. We also said that the IRA unmanaged indexes, the very best one was about 13%. Now, you aren't going to get 148% annual return, but if you get a third of that, you're still well above everything else we've been talking about. So take these results that are hypothetical with a grain of salt, but these are awful decent results with a system that has no overnight exposure, has a $300 stop on every trade, and can be completely automated while you're doing whatever you're doing. Now, this shows you the monthly breakdowns, and I always look at the losing month and see, can you handle it? Can you handle losing 600 bucks, and will you be ready to come back and go the next? This shows what would have happened if you would have started on different dates. You started on July 1st, you'd be up 5,300. You started on November 1st, you'd only be up 1,290. You started on December 1st, you'd be down 430 bucks. So that shows you kind of a rolling period analysis situation. Now, this is my before the market opens checklist. And if you're using one of my systems, it's the same for all of them. Restart your computer if you can. It clears the video memory, quite frankly. TradeStation is a great program, but it's written a little like a virus. It takes over all the hardware that's available. So what I like to do is shut that thing off, pull the plug on the computer, let it cool down a little bit, if you will, but clear that video memory, because every chart you pull up with TradeStation will hang in that video memory. Open your TradeStation. Open only your real-time desktop, the stuff that you're really going to trade and automate. Close the other workspaces. Pick the quantity and automate the appropriate strategies with confirmation off. Look at that tracker. If day trading, the indexes should say flat, flat, true. And save all the workspaces, save all the desktops, and do not run anything on this robot. When this thing's trying to trade by itself, don't go in and play with AOL and play with Facebook and all that crap, because anything that comes in front of the computer in Windows takes the resources, and TradeStation needs the box. So computers are cheap. Dedicate a $300 or $400 Walmart machine for your TradeStation and let it just do its thing. Now, at 3:01 Chicago time, this is another checklist. Look at your tracker, and if you're day trading indexes, they should say flat, flat, true. If it doesn't, go to your positions and get flat those positions. Turn off all the automation and give me a call if it's my system. I'll get on the machine with TeamViewer and I'll fix anything that's broke. But don't worry about it. Things happen. The data could have gone down. The electricity could have gone down. Anything could have happened that made you get out of sync. But we can fix it, and that's the purpose of this afternoon checklist. Now, remember when we did that 6 months test of 1 minute data? Well, why not 4 months or 3 months? This is a theory of mine. If we're willing to optimize monthly, I am, we get an advantage of tuning more closely to the current market conditions. A short time testing is a form of curve fitting, but as long as you watch the equity curve and keep the methodology in play, I feel it gives a distinct advantage. If the guy sits back and trades the 20-day moving average on daily charts, I don't think he's going to have the advantage that we'll have of taking the 3 month, the current 3 months, tuning it the best we can, and watching the equity curve closely. There is no one correct answer for optimization. The beauty of Joe Krutz Razor on Strategy Network is that I provide the inputs. I'll run them on demand at no charge for any of my lease or purchase clients. It allows you to start with my values and make tunes around my models. For instance, maybe I have a stop at 300, and you say, I don't want to risk 300. No problem. Take my variables, use them as a starting place, and optimize the stops until you get a table that you're comfortable with. Maybe it doesn't make quite so much money. Maybe it has a little more drawdown. But if you're more comfortable with a $180 stop, then by gosh, that's what you should be using. Now remember this table, and I don't know another developer who does this service at no extra charge. But there's a lot of work. Each one of these takes about an hour, and I keep them up every month. So that's part of what you're getting with me as a research department. I'm basically the technical research department for my 440 guys, and that's what I've chosen to do. This is what I like to do. Now, look at the 1 minute report on a very much shorter. This is only 3 months instead of 6 months. But now, instead of being an average trade size of 40-something, it's 71-something. Instead of 59% right, it's 64% right. Instead of a 4 to 1 ratio here, it's a 9.6 to 1. Instead of being in the market 7% of the time, you're in the market 4%, and the REIN is up to 1179. So basically, I think this is an improvement. And what we've done is we've optimized it closer to the current market. Here are the inputs for that closer tune. Here's that equity curve, and you see it's still not perfect, but it's a lot closer to that 45-degree line we set. And if we look at our weekly returns, we don't have any $600 weekly knocks. We have a 320 loser, a 162, and even this back-to-back is about 330 when you add them together. Here is the 5 minute version run on about 4 months of data. And again, our average trade size is well up there at $76. Now, let me tell you about average trade size, because I think it's very interesting. This is your expectation of event. There were 64 trades in the 3-month, 27 days. And whether you won or lost, every single trade averaged 76.45. Now, your average winner was 244, and your average loser was 203. So you made about $1.20 for every dollar you lost, but you were right 62% of the time. That's a really good number. And even if you have some deterioration, there's not a lot of slippage with the E-mini. So this is pretty decent. And here's your settings for the 5 minutes. See, it's earlier in the morning. Its time windows from between 8:40 and 9:10. It gets out of the market at 1:45. It uses a 262.50 stop, and once it makes 262.50, it risks 30% of the profits. So that's kind of interesting. And then this shows you its equity curve, which is a lot closer to that 45-degree line. Now, not going through a bunch of markets, but here's 6 other markets that are not indexes. This is the bonds, the yen, mini gold, British pound, 5-minute mini crude oil, and 1-minute mini crude oil. The concept is it's not a one-trick pony. It doesn't just work on stock indexes. It works on lots of cool stuff. Mark says, you seem to be in the market less than 1 hour for the ES 1 minute. That's not quite right. Let's go look at a minute just to see what we are. Average bars in losing trades is 73 minutes. Average bars in winning trades is 85 minutes. We're in trades about 81 minutes, Mark. Time 1, time 2 are the times within that band that we can take a new trade. But once we're in that trade, we manage the trade until we get the time exit. You understand that? Cool. All right. Sorry to digress, but that was a good question, and I'm getting towards the end anyway. Now, don't buy anything, but go to TradeStation Strategy Network, type in the search engine JOE, and take the trial of Joe Krutz Razor. If you have any questions, you can call me. I'll be glad to help you set it up. One of the things I do, again, that I don't think other developers do, is if you go to my website, which is etrackrecords.com, I have a support tab, and you can follow the instructions, and it will let me, you can send the 2 passwords it generates, and I can actually get on your machine and make any settings changes and make sure it's all set up perfectly. What's cool about that is once I log off, that password goes away and I can never use it again. You have to send me another one if you want me back on. So it's a good security thing, but it also lets me get on that box. 60% of my business is Europe and Asia, and that's very beneficial to me to be able to get on that computer and make sure it's all working perfectly. It gives us the best chance. Okay, I'm going to look at the questions now when you're ready to answer questions, Ken, which is I'm exactly ready. Joe, I found in the shorter term system that there's a 1 tick slippage on entries and exits on about 20% of the trades, and that can take a very profitable backtest to a poor performer. The computer can't you... Okay, that's fine. Let's do that. Let's look back at a 1 minute chart, and we're looking at 3 months making $4,600. That's basically $1,500 a month, and if you have 20% degree of slippage, instead of making $1,500 a month, you'll make $1,200 a month. Got any problems with making $1,200 a month trading in one lot? Not saying you will, but saying that bit of slippage on the E-mini S&P isn't very often, and it really doesn't hurt too bad. If you have 1 tick of slippage on and your average trade size is 71.54, that brings your average trade size down to about $59, $58. Cool? No, can't test on tick charts because it's based on time, and you got to have an open, high, low, close. That's why I use the 1 minute, and even when I use 5 minute, I use 1 minute resolution. Not to get into too much technicals, but there's a nice little indicator with TradeStation called average true range you can drop on a chart, and you can see what the average true range is on a 1 minute bar, and it isn't very big. So we're pretty accurate with a 1 minute bar. Any other questions, guys? I'll get to the end here. Now, if you want the PDFs, just shoot me an email, joecrutt@gmail.com, and just type PDF. I'll kick it out to you. If you want to look at my other stuff, etrackrecords.com is my website. And if you want to call my office, the phone number is 573-224-3366. Let's see here. Does it work on 15 or 30-second bars? No, it's 1-minute bars. And no, there's no problem trading lots of contracts. How fast do your fingers work when you trade with fingers? I don't know what that means. How much equity should you have to trade 1 mini? Basically, you want to have the drawdown and the day trade margin times 1.5. So if your drawdown is 1,500 and your day trade margin is 1,500, that's 3,000 times 1.5 would be about $4,500 a contract. Any other questions? I talk real fast. I used to give seminars for TradeStation. I gave about 200 of them. And I remember in New York, they asked me to slow down because I talk too fast for New Yorkers. Does this enter and exit on limits or market? No, it enters on market orders. Basically, what it'll do is it'll throw in a stop, and 1 second later, it turns it into a market order. I do that on purpose because I don't want it to show up. I don't want it to show up in the matrix or in the trade book. So my orders are not put on the TradeStation server. They're basically held in Ambiance, and then when they touch, they're thrown out as a market order. Yeah, this $300 stop is multiplied with 2 or 3 contracts. It's per contract. Everything I'm showing you today is trading the day session, day trade. Does it work on Forex? Yes, it does. Peter, if you email me what Forex you want to look at, I'll run you a report on something. Okay, guys, I'm running close on time. Any other questions? Let me know. Here I am. Okay, I'll turn it back over to Jackie. Thanks for having me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll take a trial of the Razor system. Thanks a lot. The stop loss for the mini Dow is showing up on that table. I'll put that table up as I kick it back here to Jackie. And the mini Dow stop loss is 130 on the 5-minute and 140 on the 5-minute. Define a market but quiet by looking at the range, the average range of the last so many bars. What's IOG equal true? Thank you. Yes, the TradeStation will be archived. Well, that's all I got. Jackie, over to you.
Okay, very well. Thank you for this great presentation, Joe. I'm going to give you guys a quick link, in case you missed it, of his product on Strategy Network. And you will find this webinar archived on under this link, and it will also be on the main TradeStation website under the Events Archive section. And I will share that link as well in here.
Ken, you got to buy the system to get the code. Excuse me. I have to answer that question. You don't get the code. I'm sorry, Ken.
Okay, very good. So again, this is going to be on the homepage of Strategy Network store starting February 1st. And thank you again for attending the Strategy Network Showcase. And Joe, thank you for your participation. I will leave the room open for another 5 minutes in case anybody has another question. And good night.
Thank you, Jackie. Any more questions for me? Otherwise, I'm exiting. Hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed giving it. Thanks all for coming. No, there's no other fee. In fact, it's free for the 10 days, and then after that, it's like $1.99 a month. It will work on stocks also, and ETFs is pretty good too. When you set your trial up, if you call me at my office and tell me what else you want besides these 16 items, I'll put something else up there for you, no problem. And again, if you want the PDF, just shoot me an email. Just put PDF in the memo line, and I'll kick it out to you. Any other questions, everybody? I don't want to tie the room past my limit.
We still have 4 minutes.
Oh, okay, good. Thanks a lot. Anybody else have a question there? Aaron to Ken? I don't do much custom code, but when I do, I charge by the job. You wouldn't want to know how many hours it takes me sometimes. The trial's 10 days. It can be used with the Russell. Paul, send me an email and I'll send you a report on Apple with 21 systems that'll show you some of my best stuff. As far as outright, it's $2,500 and you own it in closed code, $5,000 if you own it in open code, and any lease amount that you've paid is applied 100% towards the purchase price. And John, contact me and I'll send you my settings for the intrabar order generation because it's a little complex. It comes in with the TSW. Okay, guys. Thanks for everything. Over and out, TradeStation. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Good night, Joe.
Good night.